Shalom, shalom, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Pulse of Israel here in our eternal and ancestral homeland, the land of Israel. And today we have an interview with David Bedin. Now, anyone who's been following the news about Israel, you might have heard that just the other day Israel passed two extremely important laws dealing with restricting and or forbidding, and we'll get into the details, the United Nations UNRWA organization from activity or activities or Israeli government officials or offices working together with them here in Israel and with all the work they do, because David Bedin, the man that you sitting here right now who I've interviewed in the past, has been for decades on top of Israeli politicians, American politicians, European politicians, for decades showing them how UNRWA is basically a terror-supporting organization. It is Hamas, and after decades of his work, we are finally seeing the Israeli politicians and the Israeli government moving and doing something about this, even though the Biden-Harris administration, the United Nations, European governments were all pressuring Israel not to pass these laws. Blatant interference in Israeli democracy. That's a totally different issue. In any case, this man deserves real congratulations, and there's still much work to do for his input in ensuring we get to this point. And I wanted to introduce David and be able to talk about this even further for us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I mean,
well, the most important thing to understand is that this is not an Israel issue. The American government passed a law which was enacted on July 14, 2021, which forbids the United States from handing over any money to UNRWA if it continues with the incitement in the school system. And that was basically the accomplishment, to get them to look at the school system and implement something. And since that time, monies allocated from the United States to UNRWA have been frozen, put into escrow until they made the change. Now you look at a few basic, anyone who doubts my word, you look under the term U.S. UNRWA Accord, July 14, 2021.
Is this something anyone can easily Google?
Easy. Any Google and you can find it right there. And prior to the obligation of funds for UNRWA, the Secretary of State shall report to the Committees on Appropriations of the United States Congress that, number one, they will determine that they're inspected UNRWA installations and reported that there's any inappropriate use. Now, it goes very clear. There's nothing so complicated here. Have any staff or beneficiary violated these policies of neutrality or impartiality? Have they maintained neutrality of their facilities, their textbooks, anything like this? And have they taken, this is the most important thing, have they taken steps to ensure the content of all educational materials taught in UNRWA schools and summer camps are consistent with the values of human rights, dignity, tolerance, which does not induce incitement? Now, when we first brought this to the attention of Guterres, the head of the United Nations, we had in my staff, I work with four Jewish investigators and 4 Arab investigators. We've been going through this very carefully. And we had a meeting with Guterres, actually 4 meetings with Guterres in 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019. Right, and each time he looked at the material, and Guterres, when he saw this school book, right, the 4th grade school book, which
4th grade school book,
right, which is mandatory in their school, in the UNRWA schools. They took it from the Palestinian Authority.
And where are these UNRWA schools?
Well, there's 59 UNRWA camps, refugee camps. 1 in Jerusalem, which is now that Israel has now asked that UNRWA leave Jerusalem. We'll see what happens to that refugee camp. The other 58 are spread throughout Syria, Jordan, Lebanon, Judea, Samaria, and Gaza. Now, when we showed him this school book, okay, which is dedicated to the memory of Dalal al-Mughrabi, this woman who in this picture, we showed this to Guterres' staff, and they looked at it and said this shouldn't be, because this is a woman who murdered 38 Jews on a bus, and she herself was killed in the terrorist attack, and the book is dedicated to her memory. Now, if that's not a blatant violation of U.S. policy, I'm not talking about Israel policy, U.S. policy, which I've just read from the U.S. UNRWA accord, what is? So the expectation was if they were going to renew funding, that this would be included, not included at all. As a matter of fact, this book, which Guzar's staff contacted UNRWA, asked them to remove it. They removed it for a year, and they republished it under another date, the same content. So that's basically the basic issue. And we have on our website, IsraelBehindTheNews.com, we have a comprehensive story, comprehensive evaluation of the school books as they're being used right now, and we published it together with the Maramid Intelligence and Intelligence and Terrorism Information Center. And this will be located on our site, which is IsraelBehindTheNews.com, and we show how the textbooks, from whether it's the maps or the poems or the pictures in it, and all have one direction: no legitimacy for Israel, and no demonization of Israel, and no advocacy of peace. Now, this is the issue that we're dealing with, and this violates not only Israel consciousness and Israel feelings and values, but American values, very important, and United Nations values. Now, the theme of the United Nations schools is peace begins here. Now, we've just filmed produced a movie, comprehensive movie, which contains 25 of our movies, which we produced over the last 15 years, which is called UNRWA at War. And we produced another study of UNRWA, how the UNRWA facilities were used in the terror campaign in the past year in every possible violent situation. Now, what's most important to understand...
You're referring to Hamas actually using UNRWA facilities in Gaza in its war.
That's correct.
Against us.
And in Judea and Samaria. Now, there was active combat in Samaria, not active combat yet in Judea, let's say in Bethlehem, and we've asked to all the donor nations, and there's 67 donor nations. We send a letter to each one of them. Will you ask for an inspection of the UNRWA facilities for weapons, for ammunition, for missiles, and that which was found, of course, in Gaza, but also in Samaria, and we haven't gotten a response from anyone, and that's very important. Again, you would assume that the U.S. would do something to enforce its own law, which it's not doing.
Not only that, they're pressuring Israel.
Well,
now that we've passed this law, that they're going to punish us.
Well, I'm going to give you a scoop here. The United States Ambassador to Israel, Mr. Liu, is in violation of U.S. law because he's pushing Israel to adopt the UNRWA facilities as they are, to accept them as they are without any change. That violates U.S. law.
Wait, what? Understand? What do you mean accept them as they are?
We put in his exact statement on our site, which is that Israel has no business interfering with UNRWA facilities and changing UNRWA facilities, changing UNRWA laws.
Because right now we're kicking them out, and for Israel to take over their facilities. Right. Because they're Israeli property that was just giving permission for UNRWA to use.
Yeah, well, and what the U.S. has decided in the U.S. UNRWA Accord is that there would be supervision, and that all the incitement would be taken out.
Right. So,
and he is now violating the American Ambassador Liu is violating U.S. law. And that's the key thing I want to emphasize here. This is not an Israel-focused interview. I happen to be an American citizen, but I'm here a long time in Israel. It doesn't matter. The issue here is that the U.S. has created a law, and is not only not enforcing it, but asking Israel to
go against U.S. law.
Go against U.S. law. Whatever happens in the election next week, Mr. Liu will be called in for questioning by the United States Congress on this issue, and possibly by lawyers working for the U.S. Justice Department.
So can we rephrase or remarket the new laws passed by Israel's Knesset in terms of forbidding UNRWA activity or whatever the details are, as in a sense supporting U.S. law?
Absolutely.
So it's not just about Israel's interest. The Israeli laws are about supporting the U.S. law dealing with UNRWA.
My grandmother had an expression: "You can't make a good impression twice." My first impression of the United Nations when I was a little boy was when my parents took me to the UN, and we heard Eleanor Roosevelt, who was a great fan of not only of Israel but of justice, and she spoke about the vision of education for peace. The theme of UN education is peace begins here. You look at our 2066 movies, which is on our website, IsraelBehindTheNews.com. You see there's no inkling of peace, and it's quite opposite. They were training the children of UNRWA in their summer camps for war, and that's what happened on October 7th is a direct result of their training. And the fact that it wasn't taken seriously enough by the nations, that's the problem.
So let me ask you this, and again, David keeps on referencing the videos he's made, and he has made a number of videos. We put them up on our website. I've promoted them over the years. Some of them, not all of them, but many of them are undercover. He used Arabs and Arab speakers and foreigners to go into UNRWA facilities and interview the students. Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Qualified journalists, some of them with press credentials not only from Israel, but also from the countries abroad. And they went into schools, hospitals, summer camps, and throughout the country, also the youth facilities in the camps, and film.
Right, very amazing films because you hear the UNRWA educators, administrators, students talking straight out how they believe in destroying Israel, killing Jews.
And they say this is what they say very open. This is what they're learning in their schools, and we show that we have all the textbooks.
Right.
I got the textbooks through a very interesting manner. I went to see Yasser Arafat, the head of the PLO, and Mr. Arafat, who is, of course, this is after they made a deal that the UNRWA would use PA texts. Now, everyone was very concerned about the text because the one I've been here since 1970, and something that was on everyone's mind in the early 70s was what's going to be with the new text was what they discovered during the Six-Day War was what they were learning a process of killing Jews, not just hating Jews, but killing Jews. So the pressure to create a new school system was the basis of the peace process. I was part of the peace movement in Israel, and what motivated me to do this is that we can't have a peace movement without having peace education, and on both sides. And Israel, of course, adopted a peace curriculum, whereas the other side did not, and they could have. That was the hope of the peace process. And on January 1st, 2000, Shimon Peres, the foreign minister of Israel, said they have a peace. The PA has a peace curriculum. Well, he forgot to say one thing, that they won't use it. And I corrected Mr. Peres at the time. He said, I know. And that's what we have to do.
So he knew they weren't using it, but he was still optimistic in marketing it out that it exists.
That's correct.
Got it.
And the Peres Center for Peace and other peace institutions promoted this idea, but they neglect to say that it's not being used. Instead, an inculcation of the Arabs of Judea, Samaria, and Gaza, and Jerusalem to engage in total war, total jihad.
Right.
And again, nothing is secretive. And one of the people said, "Oh, this is like the Nazis." No, it's not. The Nazis did everything possible to hide, to obfuscate their curriculum and their calls for murder. As a teenager, I met William Shirer, author of The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. He was the Berlin correspondent for the New York Times. And he described how the Nazis tried to hide everything, while he was able to get captured film of Hitler Youth, which I recommend people look at. It's very easy to see that today.
There isn't that was used as their model camp.
Well, again, that's not dealing with the concentration camps. We're dealing with education and how teenagers were incited to do this, and then Nazis, but they tried to keep it quiet. There is no, we've encountered in my 37 years of covering this subject, we've encountered no effort whatsoever by the PA, the PLO, or UNRWA to cover up what we're doing. So in a sense, for those of you who want to go into journalism, the journalism's dream is to cover the Palestinian Authority and UNRWA because everything is open, all sources are open. We have all 1,000 school books. We purchased them from the Palestinian Authority. And this picture, this book that we just showed you, we got when we went in there and said we'd like to have a book about Dalal al-Mubardi. They said it depends on the price. So we give a good price, and we bought 50 copies, and we give them to important diplomats, journalists, and policymakers.
Right, and what makes the situation even worse is that information is public. You had access to this information. You gave this information, these textbooks, the translations, to politicians all over the world, to United Nations officials, U.S. diplomats, etc., and the world was just allowed it to continue all these years.
Continue because the priority was the economy. The priority of the new Middle East, the priority of the Oslo process was keeping the economy going. And two factors that we uncovered One is the fact that the Palestinian Authority and the PLO never ratified the Oslo Accord. We found out we sent in a left-wing journalist named Dr. Hassan Bari to the meeting where the PLO was supposed to approve the accord. It was never approved, never ratified. And last but not least, on April 24th, 1996, there was a special session of the Palestinian National Council. We sent a top crew in the Palestinian crew to film it, and there was no cancellation. And we brought in a very important left-wing academic who recently passed away, Dr. Yoshua Porat. Yoshua Porat showed that we went through the protocols, and despite the fact that Shimon Peres brought out 40 academics who said they had evaluated these sessions and they had canceled the covenant. They haven't. Now, we're dealing with an entity which has a charter for the extermination of Israel, modeled on the charter of the Arab League.
We're talking about the Palestinian Authority.
Yeah, and then the PLO, the Palestine Liberation Organization, in which the PLO the PA is based, and their charter is extermination of the Jews, and not only here but also abroad. Very important, extermination of the Jews, and that was the charter of the Arab League. Right. Everyone forgot about the Arab League until this past year. Until the past year, we're always talking about the Palestinians, only the Palestinians. But now that Israel is being attacked from Iran, from Yemen, and being threatened by all the Arabs, just about all the Arab states, the specter of what I learned in 1962 when I was a young fellow, and when we learned about my first course in Israel, 62, 63, that Israel was under an existential threat, which caused Ben Gurion to launch a nuclear program, which President Kennedy at the time opposed vigorously. And he wanted Ben Gurion to quit, and he did quit. Ben Gurion did quit. And when the PLO was started in February of 64, it was right after that. So the idea was to focus everyone only on the Palestinian people, as if they have nothing to do with the rest of the Arab world.
So let's go to the laws passed by Israel just recently. And there were two, and each one is a little different. Do you believe this will make a difference?
Yes, it will. It will strengthen the right of return, strengthen UNRWA. Because what UNRWA will do now is establish its independence and will have no dependence whatsoever on Israel. Private corporations, both from Israel and abroad, will be brought in to strengthen the UNRWA and strengthen the schools, strengthen their economy, etc. This is a very important day for UNRWA in terms of its power, and that's not what you're hearing from different people right now, but that's what's happening.
Wait, why does that sound bad? What am I missing?
Well, what you're missing is that if the purpose of UNRWA is using facilities provided by the Palestinian Liberation Organization through the Palestinian Authority and Hamas, and they'll be able to continue doing that. There's no restriction on them. What is restricted is the Israel government is being restricted, but private Israelis. Right now, there's 450 Israel corporations operating within the Palestinian Authority and UNRWA. And before they were under restrictions like what I just mentioned to stop incitement. Now those restrictions are over. So this takes away the restrictions.
So I'm totally missing the point, because according to what you're telling me, UNRWA is going to continue doing its work, continuing to educate and incite towards the genocide against Jews.
Right.
Where's the good news there?
There's no good news.
Okay.
There's no good news. The only issue is...
So what impact do these laws make?
These laws will allow the Palestinian Authority, working with Hamas, and to work with UNRWA, to establish greater independence of Israel. And push in Israel out, and Israeli corporations coming in, such as Dor Alon. Dor Alon is the petrol conglomerate monopoly. That will be able to. They will all be able to function without any restrictions or any conditions.
So this isn't good.
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah, let me try to get this correct. So basically, what these laws. So what is the impact on these laws in terms of it being good for Israel? Now that we just heard why they're not good for Israel.
I don't see.
They're not good. Not good.
I don't see anything positive for Israel.
So what's positive about these laws being passed?
Nothing.
Okay. Now we're getting to the heat of the matter. The meat of the matter. Okay. So
they establish the precedent that Israel can take unilateral steps to restrict the Palestinian Authority and then restrict UNRWA. Fine, but the result of these steps is to strengthen and to inspire the people in the refugee camps to continue their way. Every Arab child who grows up with the idea he's going back to where he came from by force of arms, and this is not stopping. And for 450 Israel corporations will make money hand over fist. That's going to increase.
Interesting. All right.
So there's no restriction. There is no restriction on private enterprise, private investment by Israelis who want to make money.
Because it only deals with government officials.
That's correct.
Being forbidden to deal with UNRWA, it doesn't touch upon individual Israelis. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so all right, so I'm going to try to break this all down now. So I'm going to preface by saying this. The importance of these laws being passed is finally the state of Israel is admitting to itself, the government of Israel is admitting to itself and to the world that UNRWA is a problem, it is Hamas, it is a terror organization, and that's something that we're internalizing as a country, as a government, in law, and that message is now being promoted for the world, for the United Nations, to realize we as a government are not going to play this game anymore, that pretending and ignoring the fact that UNRWA really is a partner in the plan to destroy Israel and kill Jews. That's the positive. The negative is UNRWA continues to exist, and by the passing of these laws, it will continue to exist without any restrictions of the Israeli government on the international community or individuals or individual Israelis working together with to continue.
UNRWA will strengthen agreement. Hamas comes out of an agreement it made in December 1995 between a power-sharing agreement between the Palestinian Authority and Hamas, and to allow the Palestinian Arabs to run their own education system. Will just begin with that, and it's going to continue. The American government is the only government that passed a law that if you want to help UNRWA, you have to do so on the basis of restricting the education. The American government is right now defying American law.
Right. So is there, besides what I just said, is there any other practical positive implications for us as Israel in this war we're up against Hamas, Hezbollah, Palestinian Authority, the United Nations, and UNRWA that are partners with them? Anything else positive for us in this development?
Of course not.
Of course not. All right, so then I'm going to follow up with this question. So Mr. David Bedin, someone who's been dedicated his life to this issue and to highlighting the danger and the enemy that is UNRWA, and with the support of the United Nations, what's your next step now to continue the fight?
The next step is
now that these laws have been passed.
The next step is to reveal what's in the schools, which is still a mystery to everyone. What's in the UNRWA schools, what's in the PA schools.
But you have been focused on that all these years.
I've been focused on it, but I have a cat here who knows about it, and friends know about it. But it's been shown to the side. When the Simon Wiesenthal Center sent a delegation to Japan to oppose the Japanese funding of the UNRWA schools and the incitement, they said, "Oh, well, we were encouraged by Israel because we were helping their economy, the Israeli economy, and the Palestinian economy." And that was the response.
So
and the leading funder right now is Germany, and Germany hasn't been confronted with the fact that they're promoting a not a system of hatred, a system of murder. We don't find, having gone through the 1,000 school books of the Palestinian Authority, having directed 26 movies inside the PA and UNRWA, we don't find hatred. We find regimentation for murder.
So I'm going to try to rephrase like this. Does the passing of these laws in Israel now make your job easier to be able to get access to these international politicians with all this information about what is taking place in those schools?
What's happened is there's now an expectation or an understanding of reality which has nothing to do with reality. Most people now assume that Israel has performed a policy, implemented a policy to restrict UNRWA and oversee UNRWA and to stop their education. Not at all. But the opposite has happened. It's counterintuitive to what people think is going on.
Wow. All right. So this is I'm surprised myself to hear this analysis of the passing of these laws. But do you still think that the passing of these laws was good, just not enough? Or no, they shouldn't have even been
It's a
passed.
step in the right direction
Okay.
for Israel to take action against UNRWA. But that's it. To take action against UNRWA and not do what needs to be done.
Okay, and what are those actions that we should be expecting the government of Israel to be taking against
Israel should be demanding that we have a few issues here. These are the 5 issues. Israel should demand a cancellation of the UNRWA curriculum, they should demand a disarming of the UNRWA schools, should insist that UNRWA dismiss any terrorists, it should introduce a project to advance the resettlement of the 4th and 5th generation of Arab refugees, and finally, to demand an audit of the $1.6 billion coming in for humanitarian purposes, which is often misused. These are the 5 issues that Israel can do, and the United Nations will support it.
Have you been in touch with these very logical and necessary demands to politicians here in Israel?
Yes.
What kind of response
They
have you received?
They ignore it completely.
Do you think now they might be more open to hearing them now that these laws have been passed?
They've now been mesmerized with the idea that Israel has taken action, which it hasn't done.
So got it. You're saying now they feel we've taken this step against UNRWA, now we can move on to other things.
That's correct.
Interesting. So it's our job to ensure that everyone understands that no, this is just only the first step,
It's a first
and
step.
that these demands are necessary.
First step, and these demands are not being made by the government of Israel or the Knesset of Israel.
Okay, so I'm going to make a post, link it so that everyone can have access to these demands and be able to share them with each and every person, Jewish organizational leader and elected official where you live, and get these demands out there to have people understand that the passing of these laws was a very good, positive first step. But as we're just hearing from David, it really just is a first step and doesn't make any change on the ground in terms of ending the genocidal agenda being pushed by the international community via UNRWA as a partner to Hamas, the Palestinian Authority,
etc. What it does is
etc.
to reinforce because no effort is being made to change the schools. People say, "Oh, let's just get rid of UNRWA." Well, I'd like to be the king of Siam. Well, it doesn't work that way. When I addressed I and my experts, we addressed the United Nations Correspondents Association 3 times over a period of 20 years. We addressed them, and they said, "Well, that's really nice, but that can't happen unless the United Nations General Assembly passes a resolution," which hasn't happened. So therefore, we wasted our time. And when we say that UNHCR, the United Nations High Commission for Refugees, should replace UNRWA, well, that's not on the agenda. And that's not on the agenda at all. Not only is it not on the agenda, but not even brought up.
Right, because ultimately, not everybody knows, and I've talked about this for years as well, the United Nations has 2 organizations that deal with refugees. UNHCR, which stands for
High Commission for Refugees.
Okay, which deals with all refugees all over the world except for refugees from quote-unquote Palestine, which UNRWA was created for them.
And recognize the issue, the human rights of a people to be resettled in humanitarian situations as a basic human right.
Right.
It's something that should be fulfilled. And that's not what this addresses.
Right. So ultimately, if the world really cared about these Arabs, they would totally get rid of UNRWA and just have UNHCR take responsibility.
These 5 policies and implement them. And when people say they get rid of UNRWA, that's not going to happen because it's totally unrealistic.
Got it. So I'm being idealistic and you're being realistic.
I don't know. I just know that there is reality. When in my past in social work, as a social worker, we wanted to improve the Israel Ministry of Welfare. We reformed many of the policies and recognized it was an entity that was there to stay. But you just work on the policies. Here, the same thing. But there's no one at this point. The only person in Israeli politics who pushed it was a guy named, an official named Mordechai Ben-Porat, who died 2 years ago at the age of 98. And he stayed with this issue for 60 years, pushing it. He was from Iraq. He was part of the underground helping the Jews from Iraq to develop. And he made a direct contact with the people in the refugee camps. He said they were listening to him and they were open to the idea. But what the Oslo process did, beginning in 1993, was to put the issue of revamping UNRWA policies on the side and say, well, we'll work through the PLO. And the purpose of the PLO is overthrowing the government and people and state of Israel. And that is the primary source for the Palestinian Authority, which people don't realize.
Right. David Bedin, thank you so much for your clarification and information and for the important work you have been doing, and you will be continuing to do.
Yep, my work has just begun, and now I'm looking for volunteers to work with embassies abroad, embassies here in Israel, and with foreign ministers abroad, and to emphasize the issue that peace, education, peace begins here is the theme of the United Nations, and it has to be implemented. But easy solutions, which is what the government of Israel and the Knesset tried to push, that's not the way to go about it.
Got it. All right. Well, I guess we will end this up by again focusing on, we're saying thank you for this first step, which again is the government of Israel finally showing via the passing of these laws that UNRWA is a problem, UNRWA is part of the problem, sending that message to the world, and now we have to continue working on making sure we actually solve the problem, as in addition to just announcing it to the world, that it is a problem.
Yeah, and the positive, the Peres always emphasized, Peres may rest in peace, that the Palestinian Authority has a peace agreement. They just rejected it. And that was not, that doesn't jive well with putting together a flourishing economy with the Palestinians. Oh, he had this idea that the same fellow who would be planting a bomb could also be fixing a computer. Sorry, when you plant the bomb, you give a more important, unfortunate statement. So we're now creating schools for planting bombs, and
that's what UNRWA is doing, basically.
And you have a law. We uncovered the law because I sent a Palestinian journalist to the Palestinian Ministry of Justice to get the law that if you murder a Jew, you get a salary for life wherever you kill a Jew.
Right.
And that's being people say, oh, it's only for West Bank, Judea, Samaria, and Gaza. No, it's for the whole country. And they have chapters in it.
As if that's okay if it's so.
Yeah, and they have chapters after chapters in their books about killing Jews in Haifa, because in Haifa is the target suggested to the children to start with Haifa, and that's where they, of course, kill the men and rape the women of Haifa.
The Jewish men and women.
That's right.
Back in 1947, 48.
Right, and the focus on right of return by force of arms, that's the theme of Palestinian education, which the government of the United States, which objects to it by law, could be making an issue of.
Right. And just to end, pulling this all together, I'm going to take David's own piece of information from his document. 67 United Nations member nations and 33 relief agencies fund a $1.6 billion UNRWA budget. 58%, which let's say that's whatever, $8.5 billion earmarked for education, which, as you just heard from the source, from David Bedin himself, who's been researching this and putting this information out there and getting the actual teachers and students and administrators to be saying it on camera, has all been educated towards killing Jews, destroying Israel, and education towards genocide.
I'll finish with a plug for my book, which is still available. It's by writing to us. I call it Roadblock to Peace. Roadblock to Peace. We have the entrance to the Ida refugee camp in in Bethlehem, 100 meters from the Rachel's tomb, the matriarch Rachel's tomb, and on the matriarch Rachel's tomb, she says it says there's a big monument in memory of Jeremiah, who says our nation will return to its borders. And down here on the corner of this monument, it says our nation will return to our borders in Arabic.
Another stealing of the Jewish narrative.
And they took
this
key and was sent on a speaking tour of Germany. Germany is because Germany has no restrictions on aid to UNRWA. Germany is now the leading funder of UNRWA. And what's very important to understand, they do through 9 nonprofit organizations, all of which are registered organizations to help Israel, and that's their focus now.
Right, which leads to a totally different topic, which I've spoken about in the past. We could always talk about it again. We're not going to get into it now. How Germany, even though everyone thinks it's Israel's best friend in Europe, by it funding UNRWA shows it never changed its Nazi colors. It just changed them from leopard stripes into other stripes.
And remember, these are not Nazis. The Nazis tried to cover up everything they did. They're very proud of what they do. It was Yasser Arafat who gave me the permission, personally gave me permission to go through their school books and produce them in several languages.
Right. So it's German money funding the modern genocide of Jews in the name of peace. That's what we're dealing with. Wow, David Bedin, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for the very important work you're doing and for your time and information.
Thank you very much. And again, I'm not going to be popular in a lot of circles because my rabbi says, don't ask David Bedin what's new on Shabbat. He might tell you.
David, there's one movie, in all the 26 videos you've done, you talk about every once in a while one movie specifically that really brings it all together. Can you just tell us about that?
Sure. We just made a new movie called UNRWA at War. We take over a period of 15 years, our cover of the UNRWA summer camps, and then we interview the children who are going to carry on the message through the gun. Children as young as 10, and who have been, by the way, what's not emphasized in any of the news coverage is the extent that the children are using Kalashnikovs and other kinds of weapons, live weapons in their summer camps, UNRWA summer camps, and they're encouraged to bring them at home. And I've asked the Israeli army to give me statistics about children who were killed while they were holding their guns. They won't give me that information.
Interesting. All right, we're going to put some clips right here so you can see exactly what some of this evidence is in this movie. And the link will be below for everyone to watch the full movie.
At UNRWA schools, education is not limited to texts and is not confined to the classroom. Inside schoolyards, students pass by violent graffiti that glorifies killers. One of the Palestinian heroes is Dalal Mughrabi, whose image adorns alleyways near UNRWA schools and neighborhoods. In 1978, she led a terror gang that commandeered a bus and murdered 38 passengers, including 13 children. On the paths of UNRWA camps, children speak about Mughrabi with awe and reverence.
دلال المغربي هي شهيدة فلسطينية فرجلت اليهود وهجرت.
And you got to watch this and share this.
The American Jewish Reform Movement offered me $10,000 to just give them one clip of the Arabs calling for peace. I said, I need the money, but I need my integrity more. Doesn't exist.
Doesn't exist. Signing off for another episode of the Pulse of Israel here in our eternal and ancestral homeland, land of Israel, in our beautiful Judean hills, David Bedin's actual backyard. Beautiful. Thank you for hosting us. If you are not yet a subscriber to our Pulse of Israel, belief-based, inspiring, politically incorrect truth about Israel, the Jewish people, and freedom-loving world, click pulseofisrael.com and sign up to subscribe. And we're a donor-based organization. If these are videos and messages that you want to ensure get out there and get shared, first of all, share them. And since we're heavily censored and shadow banned on all social media platforms, your donation is very much welcome. So just go click on the donate button every once in a while on pulseofisrael.com. Shalom, everybody, and thanks for watching.
Pulse of Israel, frontline videos from the Holy Land. Support our work by donating today.